We are live.
Yo, 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 what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Vancity Beats, Eats, and more. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jamal, and we are streaming live on our YouTube channel, Vancity Beats, Eats, and More. And we're joined today by Sheena, who is also known as Donna Dada. This is episode 6 of our season 2 of the show, and it's funded by STORYHIVE, so shout outs to TELUS for funding and supporting this critical programming where we highlight and speak to and share the stories of people who are doing really important work in the creative community here in Vancity. We are on the unceded lands, ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and they have been caring for this land since time immemorial, and we're grateful to be here to be able to express and create and play and give back to this land. So today on the show, I'm really, really excited to be joined by Sheena. A little bit of background. I grew up in Calgary, and that was my first introduction to Sheena because we were in Calgary at around the same time, but I was just kind of coming up and learning about the underground music community, and that's when I had discovered you and been experienced to your DJ sets. Uh-huh. Yes, and also attended some events that I know you were involved with as well. And this opportunity today I'm really excited for because, you know, I know you a little bit, not a whole lot, and we've been able to connect here in Vancouver as well through like B-Side Radio, but I'm stoked for this opportunity to get to know you more.
Oh, thanks so much, Joel. I'm looking forward to it too. Don't get the wrong eyes.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your time and coming and joining us. How are you feeling today?
Oh, I'm feeling super awesome. Just flew off a work meeting and biked here and very excited, trying to embrace my Vancouver life. As Jamal said, I've done a little bit of a jump from like Calgary to Toronto to Montreal to Finland to LA to Tempe. So I've been all over, but this is my last stop for now. I'm trying to embrace, you know, the hiking, the biking, the snow sports. We're still a little comes that one, but you know, maybe I'll get there.
Yeah, and we're so lucky to have like the climate that we could actually bike at the end of November.
Right.
So
growing up in Ottawa, where like skin is freezing at some point in the year, yes, I'm very, very grateful for that. Well, I'll take rain any day.
At Ottawa, isn't there the channel that freezes and people skate to work too?
That's not me though. Some people do. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So, I'd love to begin by asking you a bit about how you grew up. Like, what was your household like growing up, and how did your parents influence your upbringing?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a second-generation Canadian household. So my mom immigrated here from Trinidad. My dad's from Nigeria. Grew up in a very musical household, although, like most immigrant children, my mother kind of expected me maybe to go into like, you know, doctor, engineering, something like that. A professional, yes. You know, what they deem to be a safe, you know, financially comfortable position.
Yes.
So I remember from like being very small, like putting on Michael Jackson records, like listening to like 8-tracks of like all different people, everything from like rock and roll to like reggae to dancehall to like soca. Big up my soca people, my Trini people. So, you know, that was kind of like my household. I remember my great grandmother dancing to like the Dollar Wind, and she's like 99. So, you know, that's kind of how it went. Yeah. So, you know, when I told my mother that I was going to be doing something a little bit more musical as like, you know, a part-time gig, she was surprised, but she shouldn't have been. Like, honestly, let's be serious.
Yeah, so they brought so much of that vibrancy to you.
Absolutely. And I find that like West Indian culture is really like very entrenched in music. my cousin plays the steel pans and like the drum kit and like a calypso band in Trinidad. His daughter supports her in like the steel pan. I played piano, violin, like did all the stuff. So like music was a very big part of my life. So yeah, that's just continued.
Was there a community of a Trinidadian community in Ottawa where you grew up?
Yes, there was like a West Indian community. Yeah. My mom is like very religious, so I grew up in a very religious household. So we can understand why I did a little bit of an escape to boarding school at 16 years old. Like, love her, like, big up my 7-day Adventists, but, I love their support, maybe just not there right now. That's, awesome. But,
yeah. And then, okay, so that was, you said you went to boarding school at 16?
Yeah, I went to boarding school in Toronto, and, like, really started, like, hearing a lot of electronic music that was coming out of like the Toronto community. It was just everywhere. At the time, drum and bass was really big. It was one of the main, like I'd say, imports for drum and bass. Like the UK was the biggest one. Yeah. And then Toronto was next. So you hear like, Scarborough Mans, like talking like Mandem and, what a guan, like, There was a really big tie just because like a lot of West Indian communities during the Windrush generation went to the UK, but they also came to Toronto, especially in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of like that back and forth and sharing of culture. So of course, jungle and like drum and bass later on were obviously came through, right?
Yes.
So yeah, a lot of that stuff, and then a little bit after that, soon after that, started like raving and going to parties.
And that's where you discovered those styles of music?
Yeah, absolutely. So at first I was really big into punk rock, like, did a couple of like little, drumming things, was really big into skateboarding, was super into it. And the first time I remember hearing jungle, I was at a rave and I was in the house room and everyone had the glow sticks and I was like, yo, I'm not feeling this. I'm not trying to be up here like the first time I rave, just being all like. So I was like, okay, you know what? The bathroom, the lineup's intense. So let's go downstairs and like chill out. And everyone's like, oh, you don't want to go down there. I was like, why not? They're like, oh, downstairs is the jungle room. You don't want to go down there. And of course, like being the person that I went down there.
Yeah.
Come on, don't tell me
not to go
exactly,
down. Of course I'm gonna go.
So I went down there, and it was like every single thing had finally clicked because, I associated a lot of like reggae dance hall with my mom. So it was my mom's music, right? And punk rock was mine, but it was solely mine, especially since there wasn't a lot of like black representation in punk rock at the time. Like, I think Bad Brains was just like what I was holding on to, and like Fishbone and stuff, who, or like ska stuff. But yeah, I went down there and it was like every single thing came together. It was like the drums of punk rock and the fast beat, but with like reggae and dancehall vocals, and like I automatically fell in love.
And the energy.
The energy, like I'm telling you, there was like people with djembes, like I don't necessarily know if I condone a djembe at the rave, but they were down there and they were drumming as hard as they could, and there were girls in sports bras dancing and everyone was sweating, and of course, like most jungle rooms, it's like a hole in a closet behind the door where like, there's some guy who may or may not be taking your money, who may or may not be with the event, but like we got back there, we did the thing, and it was just like so like, it was just so genuine, and like no one was there trying to pose, no one was trying to like, see like who looked the best. They were just like there to dance, and I loved that energy, and it just stayed with me. And like every single time I like DJ or do music, like that's the kind of energy I wanted to.
Yeah, the people who were there, they want to be there.
They wanted to be there. Yeah.
That's one thing I love about jungle music that I've been more exposed to here, is the energy of it. It's wild. Yeah. And it just like, it makes me just want to like rage and headbang and
I know, doing a little headbanging. I know. Like that's what I loved about it. Before, of course, there was a lot of like historical things that were happening in the UK where jungle raves were kind of being a little bit outlawed, kind of because there were purported violence there. And then that also started to fade over here, and drum and bass started taking over and started to become more clinical, more clean, more like as production values also went up, you kind of started losing that kind of like grittiness of trying to figure something out. Like I love the point in music where it's like something new. You have influences from something else, but you're trying to create something new. I find like that's where the point of innovation happens. And when you're trying to mimic something that already exists, all you can do is perfect it. And I find that when you perfect it, you take out the humanity. So it was starting to get to that point, and I really wasn't feeling it. There was also some like problems with like drug use within the rave community that was becoming really more and more apparent, which was sad, and a lot of people were experiencing that. And I kind of pulled out for a little bit. Lots of patriarchal stuff. I was like trying to start DJing a little bit, and I was noticing that as a woman, I was facing a lot of barriers that I didn't see that my friends who were males were encountering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the point that you made about the innovation too, I think that could be based on where you're at too, because you're trying to create something in the environment that you're in too, with the people that is different from where it originated from.
Yeah.
And making it unique to that space, time and place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is cool. In terms of your experience when you started to DJ, how did you work through those initial barriers, or did you have people that you could speak with about it? A little bit, not so much. Like the first time I tried to go, I did have a lot of support from the people that I was with at the time who were making jungle. They were very supportive of like me getting in there. There was a lot of like, I was basically one of the like, we were short on black people for sure, but like we weren't short on like women or like, so yeah, there was a lot of like uplifting there. When I decided to leave because of like other problems, I didn't start DJing again until I went to Alberta the first time. Now the first time I went to Alberta was when I was like 17 years old, and I was going to a Christian college. That was kind of the trade-off that mom made with me. She's like, if you're going to go far, it's got to be the Christian college. And I was like, I love you, but I got to get away. So I got on the Greyhound and went to Alberta and ended up in a place called Lacombe. Yes.
8,000 people. So stood out there in the middle of a cornfield just being like, what mistakes have I made with my life? I'm only 18. So yeah, I mean, like we started going to like raves in Calgary, and we started going to raves in Edmonton. And at that time, Alberta was really into happy hardcore and hard house. And I was just like not having it, I came in with my camo, my jungle stuff, and then there's someone with like bunny mitts trying to like rub my face, and I was just like, whoa, personal bubble,
Respect my space.
Yeah, exactly. And there was like, the only person playing jungle was like some poor person stuck in the Kochek with a tape deck, and I was just like, okay, it's time that I really start taking this seriously, because the only way I'm going to hear the music that I want is if I play it. So I went and I got 2 Gemini belt-driven turntables.
Whoa. I have never even heard of Gemini.
Yes, they were horrible. They were no techs, let me tell you. And I got a little, crummy mixer. Yeah. And got in there, and I remember I had 2 Michael Jackson records. That's how I started. And then,
were they the same record?
Yeah,
or
they're the same records. Okay. Trying to beat match. Yeah. And like I just like flip with the thing and then try to beat match them, and it was like belt-driven, so it'd be like, you develop some bad habits of touching the platter to try to get it to stay on beat. Yeah. But that's how I originally started. And then when I went home, because of the fact that everyone was changing to CDJs from vinyl, they were just like, yo, just take my old jungle vinyl, like take it. So I still have like an amazing jungle vinyl collection from everyone who was like offloading at the time. Yeah. All those people, don't try to come buy them back, okay? They're mine. So, yeah, that's how I started. And it was just like trial and error and bit by bit, and yeah. So when you went back, were you continuing to DJ vinyl? Yes, I continued to DJ vinyl in some sort of form. So it was either vinyl, and then I went to Serato vinyl. Yeah. But I do remember one time in Calgary, I was opening for Juan Atkins, and they had CDJs, and I went home to get my turntables. And I was like, oh, I can handle these CDJs. Went, got a taxi cab, brought the turntables back, and mixed vinyl. And that was like not that long ago. Like if you'll notice, I just recently started hitting the cue button. But before, I used to cue the platter on the CDJ. And everyone's like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, ooh, I'm dating myself. That's what I'm doing. I mean, those are still really good skills to hold on to. I guess. Yeah. Sure make me feel better. Where's my olive olay?
And then, so when you went back to Ontario, is that where you went back to, Ontario, after?
Yeah, afterwards I went to Ontario and was DJing out a little bit, but like I was experiencing like really high anxiety. So it really affected the way that I would like play, because I'd DJ and then I'd beat myself up about it. I'd be like, I need to represent Black women. I need to represent like women. I need to represent this group or that. You know, I need to represent the person that's crossing the street right now. And like all of that stuff just was like weighing so heavily that when I'd make a mistake, I would wake up crying about it like weeks later. And it came to the point where, like, although I loved like the hour on stage, the lead up and the post were just becoming like so intense. That I needed to take a break and find ways to like express my artistic side in other ways, which led to a couple of projects like Freq, led to like, I did play at Modern Math, but it led to a lot of like the support and planning and playing for Modern Math. Being with a crew was really helpful to my anxiety, and it eventually led to like my change in profession. Okay, so you touched a bit about Freq magazine. Can you tell us a bit more about it? Yeah, for sure. Started, was like writing for Beetroot, and my best friend Paul Brooks was like doing a lot of like the editor stuff, and I was writing for him, and we were talking with a group of people, and we were realizing that like electronic music was more than just like a column. It like had so much more. Like there was like so much more about the lifestyle and the culture and the things that we were interested, having like electronic music at the center that needed to be explored. And that's how we started Freq magazine. And what was the focus of Freq magazine? Yeah, so the Freq magazine was just like electronic music and the culture that surrounded it. Okay. So like we would talk anything from like art to like different political topics that might have been like on the minds of people within the community, different social issues that we were facing, that our community faced. It covered all of that stuff. It covered stuff from like Syria to like arts collectives in the UK to like Rashad and like Tech Life, and like we did it all. So. And it was a print publication. It was a print publication, and we tried to do it with a lot of like a lot of care, and we tried to make it like collectible. So. The company that I was working with at the time, who helped do the magazine, Blackwater, they were the designers, and they would design the ads so that the ads would be in keeping with the magazine. And it was like so beautiful, heavyweight paper, large format. I don't know if you remember it. I do remember. Yeah. So yeah, lots of support from like my editors, Kayla Graham and Magda Gorski, and yeah, we just like tried to do the thing. Oh yeah, much respect for that. Just something physical too. Yeah. That people can hold on to and keep and feel, you know? I know. So much love goes into that. Yeah. How did Freq magazine evolve over the course of it? Yeah, so it started off kind of like as a flimsy paper magazine. We were doing it in concert with Beetroot. It was kind of like a split off of Beetroot. And then after that, we were just like, okay, it does take immense pressure to like do a full magazine every single month, especially since it was off a lot of our side of our desks. At that time, I was taking my master's in urban planning. So it was like a lot, plus working a full-time job, plus DJing and running a night, plus doing a magazine. And, you know, we're just like, okay, so how can we like increase the value of it, but maybe like, you know, deregulate the frequency, which is sad for one called frequency, but yeah, we were able to like just do it quarterly. We decided that we're going to put our efforts into just doing it quarterly and just like up the production value. And did that help with everyone's energy inputs? It did help a little bit, but at the time, as we know, there is definitely like a large switch from like print to online, and that was like really becoming prevalent at the time. And being able to keep up on top of online content is just so intense, and for the small team that we had, we didn't necessarily have the ability to do so. So not only are you not necessarily keeping up with possible incoming trends and incoming stories that are coming up, you're also kind of like reducing your reach, right? So we were finding that it was very local, and people, when we went to the advertisers, they were like, why should we advertise with you when we could just advertise online for ourselves, right? And at that time, like, I mean, a big supporter was like the Hi-Fi crew in Commonwealth. They did a lot of supporting with the advertisement, and we were very grateful for their support, especially as a music institution in Calgary at the time. But yeah, it was difficult. lots of love went in, and when it ended, I mean, there was lots of tears, but like we realized that we just needed to create space for something different, you know? We'd done our part, we laid some groundwork, and we presented some information on a platform where people could either run with it to do something even better and improve on what we did and learn from our mistakes, or, you know, maybe go somewhere different. So, yeah.
With grace, you know?
With
closing
grace.
that cycle with
Yeah.
grace.
Kicking and screaming.
So you started Freq magazine while you're doing your master's, and you mentioned at the time you were also involved with Modern Math, which was a collective or crew who were very, you know, some legendary peeps.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you eventually start getting back into DJing?
Yes. So Modern Math, I started getting back into DJing. I mean, we all met over our love of dubstep at the time, and we started a dubstep night. Quickly into the dubstep whole thing, I went to the UK and I went to this party called DMZ, and it was their 4th year anniversary, and I went there and I saw the dubstep greats, and I remember I was sitting there with my green Game Boy and I was sitting on the steps, and some guy came up to me and he was just like, yo, what's going on? And I was like, oh great, someone wants to talk to me. Like, that's perfectly fine, I'm here by myself, you know.
Yeah.
And he was just like, you know, it's bank holiday, like you're definitely going to want to come to this night. And I was like, okay. And I was like, either I'm going to hear great music or he's going to kill me. So I went to, it was a great night. Yeah. So as I'm still here, we obviously know it was a great night. Yeah. And it really changed my direction a little bit. That night was a Night Slugs night. So it was like Night Slugs, it was like Elvis 1990, Bok Bok, MOARRR, Crazy Cousins. And it really turned me on to a genre called UK Funky, which I also was really identified with because it had like kind of like a soca kickback with so I was like, oh, I recognize this. This is something I recognize. At the time, dubstep was becoming a little bit heavier, and I was like, you know what? Everyone's getting that. It's like, I'll come in as the intro, do a little palate cleanse, and then go some UK funky, and then we'll go back into the dubstep, you know? So, yeah. And so I started DJing more and more, but there was like also, it was really important to me, and I don't know whether it was an excuse, but it was really important to me to like create a safe environment where people could dance. And I felt like the way that I could possibly do that was being like the first person they saw at the door, and the person available for all the questions that they might have, and like the person who's going around being like, are you having a good time? The person who's making sure that everyone was okay, and that like, you know, sitting in the back and watching the reactions and being like, okay, we know that this one really hits. So that was kind of like also what I personally like took as like my role there too, on top of the palate cleanser.
And kind of like the host.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, you know? So, yeah.
Caring, like showing that care throughout, in multiple ways throughout the night.
And I still get people walking up to me just being like, and I don't want to be like, ooh. You know, they're like, wow, if it wasn't for you, my path of music would have been totally different if it wasn't for you, Modern Math, and the crew there. So, yeah. Yeah.
And I think that topic of safe spaces, safe event spaces, safe spaces to like listen to music or party or rave is only increasing in awareness too as time goes on.
Absolutely. I mean, like, as a person who came from like an old rave scene, old raver to like now, I mean, I think that those spaces were always kind of there, but now they're more formalized. And there's just like more talk about just like care, and also some of the mental health issues that people come with when they come and try to find a place where they belong. I think that those conversations are more out in the open, but I mean, like, you heard about MOARRR and stuff like that, and people would always be like, you know, you see someone broken on the dance floor, you're like, do you need some water? Like, where are your friends? And there's always been a little bit of a culture of care. They call it MOARRR, but it's always been there. And now that it's more formalized, though, where people know that they can go access safety, that's even better.
And that I feel like those safety resources are more present as well.
Yes.
In the spaces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, people are being obviously more open about those conversations. And there's also not like so much like a culture of shame to admit that you have a problem, right? And that's because of a lot of work that foundational people have been doing to lay down these like very definitive safe spaces, right? So, yeah.
how have you seen, like, since you started kind of doing that for yourself, or at least just as something that you thought was important, how have you seen that also expand, like, between Calgary and Vancouver or other areas?
Oh, I mean, like, I intrinsically knew to, like, you know, take care of people, but now we're seeing people with, like, trauma-informed practice and people who, like, actually know, you know, some of them are, like, you know, nurses, or some of them are, like, counselors, some of them are, like, you know, some of them, are, like, doctors, you know, there's, like, lots of, like, you know, women and men who are, like, there, who are just, like, and, you know, gender diverse people, who are there just to be able to, like, provide that very structured care, where it's not like me, who's just, like, flying off the cuff and just being like, you know, I think you need this. And it's just like, you know, rub some Robitussin on it or something. Like, you know, you actually have someone who, like, knows what they're talking about, and that you can follow up with, right?
Yes. And you can feel safe or trust their care as well.
Exactly. You can trust their care.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm an urban planner, and I'm going to tell you what you need right now. It's just like, what? Get out of here. Weren't you just DJing? Like, you know, so, yeah.
And a bit earlier you mentioned that at one point the anxiety that you felt kind of led you to change your career. And you just mentioned that you're an urban planner, you were doing a master's of planning.
Yeah.
So how did that shift take place?
Whew. Well, yeah, that's a long journey. So, I mean, we started off with, like, I got to be a doctor. That, like, slowly boiled down to I'm going to be a geneticist. I want to create a dog monkey. The dog monkey is completely unethical. And, like, we're not there, nor should we be there. Realized that pretty early on. It was just like, genetics might not be my thing anymore. Like, there goes man's best friend, like, gone up in a puff of smoke. But still did the biochemistry degree and the chemistry degree. So finished those off. You know, a little bit of disappointment, realizing that I probably didn't really belong in a lab, pretty extroverted. And then just kind of, like, meandered from there. Went to environmental management in Calgary afterwards when I was feeling a little bit lost after working at a camera store. Did environmental management, had the opportunity to move to Finland. And when I was in Finland, found out a lot about, like, design and just, like, design thinking. And then came back and was just like, okay, like, you know, the ADHD is strong in this one. There's so many different things. Like, what is it going to be? I love music, but I am science brained, and there's, like, so many of these interesting things. And, like, honestly, planning is, like, the catch-all for everything. Yeah. And I was just like, a cultural planner, that's what I shall be. So, yeah, I went to school to become a cultural planner.
And what have you been doing since then?
Not cultural planning. Yeah, I mean, after cultural planning, found out that there's very few cultural planning jobs. And then when you said cultural planning, they weren't thinking about culture, they were thinking about dusty old buildings. And I was just like, oh my God, I did not leave one dusty old building to come to another dusty old building. So I was doing a lot of planning adjacent work, and I'm pretty stubborn. And after I finished school, I was like, I am not going to be a person to be stamping development papers. Like, that's not me. It's someone, but it's not me. So I did a lot of planning adjacent work. Started a company called Nightlab, which was a nightlife consultancy, which is a consultancy company to help, like, people, like, figure out how to maximize the nighttime economy. And through that work and some other planning adjacent work, I found out about the job at the city of Vancouver. The city of Vancouver is one of few municipalities that actually have cultural planners. And then I came into the cultural equity and accessibility role in the cultural services department, which was basically supposed to help make sure that, like, equity was at the foundation of all the granting programs, how they interacted with the community, how they selected their artists, how they delivered their music programs and grants. And yeah, that's where I am now. So.
Really cool. Yeah.
I found my way!
It takes time.
Yeah, no, it really, really does take time. And I do really, really want to stress this because, I mean, I didn't go to planning school until I was 34. So, like, you know, I feel there is a lot of pressure always to get it right the first time. And that's not true. You can live multiple lives, you know? Science didn't make us live until 87, no matter how miserable the last 17 years are, for any reason. It's for you to change your jobs and do what you want to do a million times over and try try a bunch of things.
Oh yeah, so many different iterations of how we think and like what we want to put our energy into.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
We're constantly changing and we're constantly being influenced by our surroundings. So why should we stay in one spot, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like we're also constantly learning about ourselves and like gaining clarity about what we actually want.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I totally agree. So yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit about the equity that you mentioned. Like, how does the city ensure that there is equity in these processes that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. The city does it through multiple different ways. We realize that like we're not representative of all communities. So what we do is we sometimes assemble different people, whether that's through like stakeholder consultation or engagement, not consultation, right holder consultation, stakeholder engagement. Whether it's through stakeholder engagement or just by like finding ways to like incorporate the community in the decisions that we're making that are representative. And what we're saying when we think about equity, we're thinking about like uplifting historically marginalized voices because like, you know, in the past, they were like not allowed to access like a lot of the resources or the wealth or the opportunities that other populations are. So what can we do to make sure that they do have those opportunities now? And like trying to like balance that out. So yeah.
And do you feel that is like a process that's been like honored and is still respected, like that they do implement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've worked or been like close to working with other municipalities, and the city of Vancouver, I do work for them, but just like in general, like I feel that they're doing some really good work. Like, you know, we just passed an accessibility strategy. I know it's federally mandated, but that stuff was going through before that. And even before that, cultural services were like, you know, when you're doing a grant process, you have to talk about like, what are you doing for accessibility? And accessibility not being only like universal design for people with like mobility issues. It's like also to look like access to barriers, like mental health barriers. Like, what are you doing to like possibly mitigate that? Like, what are you doing to possibly mitigate people who may have socioeconomic barriers? So like just like talking about access in a more complete way, because a lot of those things, as we know, are intersecting and compounding, right? So and just like trying to like look at it intersectionally. So I mean, like I'm not even trying to say it's perfect. Like we're constantly learning, things are constantly changing. But I think that a lot of the staff that I currently work with are really good at taking it on the chin and just being like, you know, I tried this, and someone from community is like, that sucked, and we're like, okay, thank you very much. Like, ooh, we're gonna take that and just like cry a little bit. We're trying so hard. But you know, just being like, okay, what can we do to make this better? You know, like, so like, you know, I always talked about like being able to like access privilege and power, and now I have the opportunity to actually change things from the inside. So what am I doing about it? And that's what I'm really trying to do, because that's why I really started planning. My friends' parties started getting shut down, and I went into planning school to try to infiltrate from the inside.
Yes. Respect.
I hope my boss doesn't see this. I'm just joking. They already know. They were totally fine. They were like, yay! Yeah. You know, so they knew they hired. Yeah. So yeah.
That's good. That's cool that both sides see the value of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like very understanding, and very like understanding that it does take like someone who, because this work is hard, and especially when you're in a work that is like based on your identity, you can't take that off. Right? A lot of times people have work that is specifically tied to their communities, and they can't take that off either. So like, you know, we're working right now and trying to figure out like what's the care that those staff need, because they do need extra support. So what does that look like? Does it mean like I have access to a Black counselor? I have access to a Black employee resource group that I'm part of, you know, where we just sit around for 1 hour and just be like, ooh, times are hard. You know, like, what books are you reading? You know, like, we just need to shut off. Are we going to go get some food together? You know, so like, what is that extra support that the staff need? You know, even something as small as like trying to do like engagement and being like honoraria. Just be like, you know, we are asking people's expert, like people who have lived experience, we're asking their we're asking for their experience. That's consulting. So like, what can we do to pay them for their time? And just like looking at like how that works. So like little things like that, we're constantly trying to tweak and trying to figure it out. We don't always get it right. And you know, the city's not a monolith. I can only speak for like what I'm doing right now at cultural services and the departments that I'm working with within cultural services. So yeah.
I think it's really cool that you know that you're trying to break these barriers, but you're also open to the feedback, and although it might, you know, hurt a little bit because of all the energy you put in, you're still taking those strides forward.
You gotta strip away ego, right? Because the hurt comes from the fact that you're just like, you don't know how much work I put into this, and you don't know how much but like, it doesn't matter. The outcome still created harm. So like, what you have to do is you have to own up to that and be like, hey, listen, even though this went into it, all this thought went into it, you know, it still caused harm. So like, that's the way that it, you know, I gotta say sorry for that. Like, you know, a lot of times people are just like, oh, you're the city, the VPD, and I'm like, I'm not the Vancouver Police Department. I'm the Cultural Services Department. But like, you know, that's not my place. If someone is like actually like trying to tell me how they feel because they have some unanswered need, to tell them the difference between where our two different departments come from, or like where our two organizations come from. So I just sit there and I'm just like, thank you very much, and I'm going to see how this information can be fed to someone who could actually do something about it, right? So yeah.
And I mean, and also, it's important, I think, to have you in this position, because the city, it's beneficial to the city as well to have culture, and in the form of like people playing music or gathering around music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our music planner is dope. Like when, you know, so yeah, we have like every single person has like some draw, like people who have like theater majors or like, you know, other things. They've been working with the Powell Street Festival, or they've like, you know, they're really into books before, or like working for different festivals. So there's like all this like really, there's this artistic thread that runs through everything that I really love, even though we're doing like more sort of like administrative, like policy, you know, city work. So yeah.
Are there any other comrades, like people who you're like, oh, you're one of us, like musically, or like people who have like that music background?
Oh, there's one person in the Spaces team. Shout out to Julie. I was just like, you know, saw each other at a couple of like dancing events, and it's super great. Sometimes I come back and she's been there, and I didn't even know she was there, and everyone's like, yeah, she was there, and I was like, sick. That's dope. So I was like, I see you. Yes. When we come back from Base Coast the week after, and we're all tired and dusty and coughing from the dust, I'm just like, I see you, Julie.
Yes. In terms of, I mean, I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion, the umbrella term, it's kind of like, there's a couple sides to it. You know, some people have mentioned that it's maybe doesn't stand up to like what it's meant to, or like that it's more words than actions. Do you think, what else do you think that we could do as like civilians and people, or on the city side of things, to take maybe more accountability?
Well, I think it's first about the way that we talk about it. A lot of times people are like, we're going to add an equity lens to something.
Yes.
And I'm just like, you know, equity is not an appendage. Equity out of the house is your foundation. So like, you know, your finances can be equitable. You're like, you need to think about everything with equity in it. It's imbued all the way through every single part of the process. It's not something that you just add on at the end and try to like mold it into a more equitable format. And I think that we're really moving away from that. So that's really good. But like, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of work to be done for sure. I think that we, like everyone has unconscious biases. That's just the way that the world works. But at the end of the day, it's like what you do with those unconscious biases. Like your brain's lazy. It's like built to be lazy, and it's built to take the quick route to an assumption, and that's just the way it is, right? But it's not that quick assumption. It's like what you decide to do after you've just been like, oh, brain, what was that? You know, pack it away. Let's like figure out like what the reasoning is behind this. So like, I mean, those are really good things. But we have like come pretty far. I'd say that like what needs to happen is I think we just need to listen to each other more, in ways that are just like open and try to reduce our defenses. And, you know, just like I am with the city when I just like take that hit and I'm like, oh, but like I did this and this and this. It's just like, take a deep breath. I'm taking in what you're going to say. Like, I don't agree with it. Like, you know, I could say that, but at least I'm like listening and trying to figure it out. I think the city needs to do more listening. I need to do more listening. I think we all need to do more listening. We need to like genuinely listening to what communities want instead of assuming what they want, and all of that stuff. So, yeah.
You heard that. Listen. Open your ears. For those tuning in, welcome. We are sitting here with Sheena, aka Donna Dada, and just want to say thanks for tuning in. Tell your friends about the show, Vancity Beats, Eats, and more. And so, thank you so much for just opening up and sharing all of that you've been sharing. Like we've been going through the Sheena's journey from like growing up to getting into music to school and those decisions and also the experiences throughout all of them. I wanted to ask you a bit about Night Lab, which you touched on.
Yeah.
So it's a consultancy group that consults about nightlife and maximizing nightlife
like potential, like, and
yes.
like honestly, like re-educate. It ended up being a lot of re-education. Sadly, we started in 2019, just when COVID hit.
Yeah.
It was like myself, my really good friend Nick and Martina. And yeah, it was just about thinking about night holistically and like understanding that it's not just about nightlife, but it's about all the things that are like kind of connected with it. I was really interested in nightlife when I realized that my mother, who like worked 2 jobs, would come home at 11 o'clock at night, get dropped off at a bus that frequently ran, had to walk up a street that wasn't lit. Like all of these things are things that we need to think about when we think about the night. It's not just about a restaurant or a club, but it's also about the people who are night workers, bus drivers, like Uber drivers, like all of these people are using night space as well. So like how could we create a city that is like functional in every single way, right? So that was kind of like the way it was. That's what we were talking about. Did like a lot of talks, went to Chautauqua where I spoke to a lot of, the reason why I'm taking a deep sigh is because the next week on the same pulpit, on the same stage, Salman Rushdie got stabbed. And I was like, oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah, also like talking at Chautauqua. But I mean like the place, it was an amazing experience where I actually got to talk about like different things within the night economy and just about how to be proactive instead of reactive, about ways to like do monitoring without policing and about like being able to like answer some of the questions before they became an issue. So that was really good. I have to admit it has been on hold. Having a 6-year-old, DJing, starting a new job, moving from Ottawa across the country. I moved in with my partner Christian at the same time, came from Toronto, who's also a planner. It was a lot. My friend also moved into a pretty big position in the cultural department at the city of Ottawa. So we had covered 2 cities and we're just like, who can we consult with if we're already working for 2 cities, you know? And that became a thing. But I mean, like, it's not dead in the water. Our site is still up there because we do believe of the importance of it. What I have been doing is I have been kind of like nestled under another company called Vibe Lab. The person who started Vibe Lab was Mirka Milan, who was the Night Mayor of Amsterdam. The first Night Mayor of Amsterdam. So I've done some work with him and his company, great team of people. We just recently helped Toronto with their facilitation when they were talking about rezoning and bylaws for nightlife spaces, restaurants, bars, etc. So there's that little bit of side work is still working, but like I have to admit that my focus has mainly been sort of like this life, which I'm barely holding on to. I know. I was talking to my friend and she was just like, do you even DJ? I was just like, yeah, I do. She's like, you just don't care about social media, do you? I was like, I do care. I just don't have time. If anyone wants to do my social media, please talk to me. Because I have no clue. What's the TikToks? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you got to decide where to put your energy into and what serves you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, you know, I find that it's like I would love to be out. I'd love to be, you know, there showing face and being there supporting all my friends and all the shows. But, you know, you go out, it's like $150 in babysitter fees, and right there I'm in the minus. And I'm just like, yeah, you know, I love playing. I love being out there supporting my friends that do play. I love social media, I guess, even though I don't do it. But yeah, you know, I have to like really be cognizant of like how to shape my time, especially with a school-aged child, and also like looking really at starting to do more production. In the new year. So Michael Red and I have a tune that's going to be coming out fairly soon. It's a jungle tune. Yes, so Michael.
Air horns.
Yeah, exactly. We love Selecta. Yeah. So it'll be that, and you know, also doing some more like formalized Ableton training in the new year as well. So looking forward to that. Starts in January, so wish me luck.
Yes, best of luck. Yeah, so music production, making music.
Yeah.
That's where you're kind of stepping into.
Yeah, you know, like I kind of, yeah, it's like I have music in me. I have like lots of ideas. I always have. I have been intimidated by, I'm not very great with details, and I do get overwhelmed easily. So you get there and someone's like, this is what you do, blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, oh my God, you know, and then you just like put it away and start freaking out every single time you touch it. But, you know, working with someone who was super great, who like had more knowledge of the program, and being able to like spit out ideas and back and forth and seeing those ideas realized was fantastic. But like I also realized that people are busy and they don't always have time for co-creation. So like I need to like at least learn how to be able to like express my thoughts. We're going to start with a sketch. We're not going to be disappointed when the whole tune doesn't match what's in my head.
Yeah.
We'll start off small and then we'll just keep going in increments.
That's, that idea of co-creation, of like working with someone who maybe you have the ideas that you can express, but and then they can help facilitate bringing those ideas into the sonic realm.
Exactly.
Oh, that's really cool. Have you felt or have been co-creating with people in other areas as you were going through your journey?
I've had like a couple of really like good moments. It's always like, let's do this, and then it happens. One that's on my SoundCloud right now is with Sandro, so Sergio SP. So it's like the reason why I'm saying this, like Mr. Geography, Sergio Level, Sergio SP,
so many aliases.
who I did modern math with. we just were roommates at one point, and we did like a quick one-off, and it turned into a really dope song. Michael and I were like hanging out. Michael Red and I were hanging out, and again, we were just like, let's sit down and do it. And I was just like, this is the song that I want to remix. And it just like flew right off. You know, I could be like, bum, bum, bum. And he's just like, dun, dun, dun. And I'm just like, that's the sound I was looking for. How did you know? And it's just like synergistic, you know, you just keep on like building on the energy. So,
When you were coming up in like these creating events or being part of these nighttime spaces, did you have any mentors who were helping you to learn some of these ways?
My idols have all fallen. No, I'm just joking. That's not true. I had a lot of like really good people like helping me. There's been so many different people various times. Like, I mean, like my modern math crew was amazing. So that's like Dan Solo, that's Kaylee Cummings or Thief, that's like Lauren or Lauren B. Paul Brooks has always been inspirational to me, and you know, I guess Sandra as well, and then just like, you know, right now I'm kind of, it changes all the time. Like right now I just like see someone, I love what they're doing. Like right now some of my inspirations are like some black women in the scene that are killing it right now. So like Ann's is killing it. You know, locally we're talking about, you know, Nishoki is killing it, loving like every single time I'm there front row, like girl, like I love what you just did this. I was at Bass Coast, DJ Aiden killed it. Just doing some cutting that I'm really loving. You know, like it's not necessarily, because I realized pretty early on, as a person who threw shows, who was able, when dubstep was so influential to meet me, and like kind of realized that maybe shouldn't be idolizing the whole person. That now is just like little bits of like, you know, love. That's what it is. I'm just like, love what you're doing and love you and, you know, love that, and I'm taking it in and like, you know, absorbing it and learning from it. Leads to less disappointment for me.
Yeah.
So, however, I did see Interplanetary Criminal after years of wanting to see him play at Base Coast, and it did not disappoint.
Oh my goodness, I was there too, yeah.
It was like pretty much, I think I said something so off that he's probably like, woo, get me out of here really quickly. I was like, they didn't book me this year because I played all your tunes last year, but I couldn't book 2 Interplanetary Criminals. And he was like, get out of here. You know, so but yeah, didn't disappoint. So that one didn't disappoint, but yeah, just trying to keep like bits and pieces of love and just like really like, you know, like supporting and lifting up the people that like, you know, are doing great work. Also like Hood Joplin, oh my God, came in and like not only destroys, but it's like you would never like, well, no, you would guess, but it's just like, okay, we want to do some grants, let's get it done. Like organize like boop boop boop, like, you know, like spreadsheets, like this is how we do. We're gonna have a conversation at 7 o'clock to talk about this. Just like so amazing to see like, you know, like someone who's so artistic but not a hot mess, and I'm just like, that exists. So yeah, you know, it's fantastic. Another person who I'm just like, wow, chef's kiss.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so showing that support to those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and creating those relationships too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah.
In terms of the nightlife here in Vancity, do you feel that it's safer?
Safer than what?
Than maybe when you first moved here, or?
I haven't moved here that long ago.
Okay.
Right? So I moved here about 2 years ago.
Okay.
I've never had problems with safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never had problems. But I also am like a little physically imposing, and like, you know, so I don't know if I'm necessarily like blind to things that sorry, I shouldn't use that word, not blind, but like maybe that I can't see some of the things that other people may feel intimidated or unsafe about.
Yeah.
You know, like being in Parkdale at the, like, you know, in the 90s, I was just like, you know, people were like, oh my goodness, it's like such a bad neighborhood. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just like, you know, I was just like, you just don't leave your bike. I feel totally safe. Like, I wouldn't leave my bike unlocked for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's gone. Like, you're an idiot, so you deserve that. But like, you know, it was kind of like, it was so like, I've never really felt ever like threatened or unsafe. So I don't really know. I can't really say. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Long explanation to say I know nothing.
In terms of your work with the city, I remember talking to you a while ago, and you kind of brought up the side of like permitting or event permitting or access to funds or access to licenses and permits for example, let's say I want to throw an event in Vancity. Can you explain a bit like how people can access those? Yeah,
absolutely. Honestly, like I just want to say like shout outs to the Spaces Department, and shout out to Sadie, who is our music planner, who's just like really fighting for everyone super hard. Yeah, I mean, like right now, the artist events license allows you to throw parties in unconventional spaces. It allowed you to do it for 3 times a month. Afterwards, after doing some just brief fire checks and stuff to make sure that you have the proper exits and like to give you the capacity, you were able to change like storage space, like office space, like retail space into an event space, as long as it was in the designated zones, right? You can't do it smack dab in the middle of like Stratacoma. Right? But there are like definitely distinct zones that you're allowed to do it in. City Council just passed, and now you're allowed to do 6 times.
A month?
6 times a month.
Wow, in the same space?
Yeah, like in the same space. So you're allowed to do 6 times a month. And like when I shopped that idea around to like other municipalities, they didn't have the ability to do that because of like certain planning restrictions. So the fact that we have that in Vancouver is like pretty unique. And also the spaces to be able to do it. So yeah, I mean, like every single time, I mean, those teams are like just fighting, because we have a making space for arts and culture cultural plan, which is like no loss of cultural space.
Yeah.
In fact, like improving, like having more cultural space. And that team works so hard. They're constantly fighting to like make sure that artists have space, in all ways, from like music space to like Class A space, which is more like art and like acoustic sort of like working space. Class A studio space. So yeah, I mean they're really trying, but there's a bunch of stuff that is like completely out of our hands that every single place across the world is facing. Just like there's a lack of housing, right? And people are like developing housing.
Mm-hmm.
You have some places who have the agent of change principle that just says whoever changes the area is responsible for the noise mitigation. So if I am building a condo near a club, then I need to make sure that it's insulated, and it's up to me to make sure the responsibility it carries forward. Like it's up to me to make sure that if there's any complaints, the complaints are put on me as a developer.
Oh wow! So the building that's being developed needs to be insulated so the residents don't hear the club.
Yes,
that's cool.
But if the club comes in, then they have to make sure that their place is insulated so that so it's whoever changes the area.
Okay.
And a lot of people like London has put that through. Like Australia, Victoria has put that through. That state's put that through. I mean, I'd love it to see it here. But I mean, like we do have a housing crisis. We do have people who like think that it's going to be okay that they have a place behind a club, and then afterwards they're just like, their priorities change, and the next thing they know they're just like, oh my god, my $1 million condo, I can't sleep, and they don't want to move to, I don't know, Delta. So so like that happens, and then like other things too, just like there's a loss of space, there's like actual loss of space that's happening because of like development and because of different things. So, and then there's the mountains, and there's the border, and then there's a cost of land. Like, I mean, if we're saying, hey, you need this much of a percentage of amenity space, developers like, I'm losing the ability to sell that space, and this building is becoming even less and less affordable. The cost of like increased materials and the cost of increased labor, and like so it ends up being like this big whole entire wicked web of complexity, even though everyone's trying to solve. But like we just know that there's like pain points for the community. And like I said, those things don't matter. I mean, they do, but like us trying to give excuses for why we're not delivering is not necessarily the point. We just have to keep trying harder, right? And they are trying so hard, and I respect them so much for all the work that they do for the community behind the scenes.
It's really cool to hear more about the inner workings of the department that you work in, and like the other areas that are affiliated with your work. It's a really cool opportunity to get like an inside description of what everyone's working on and how much effort they put into it. So yeah, thanks for opening that up for us. Sure. Are there other cities around the world that you take example or inspiration from for what you want to bring here?
I mean, like London's always I love London, but I mean like every like just like everything, like every person's like a different beast, like London is great. They have a nightmare, they have their night strategies, they do stuff with the boroughs. Like boroughs have like their own sort of like night strategies and night targets that are really great. Amsterdam has done a lot where they actually took like they started like developing permits outside for people to be able to throw late night events that were 24/7, but it was outside the urban areas, so they were able to reduce the pressures which was happening in the red light district and spread it out so that there was like less complaints about all the things that come with like mass people and noise and whatever else they're doing. So that was really awesome. Berlin is obviously fantastic. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of really great places in Europe. I mean, like, Australia is also doing some things, and I know that there's, like, other places in South America that are trying to do some things. There's a really great scholar from, I can't remember where in South America, but she did a report with Miracle Law that talks about nightmares and which cities had them. And what their their governmental like nighttime strategy was, whether they just had someone within the office or whether they were in a singular office by themselves advising to the mayor or council, or whether it was like an economic development office. So I forget her name right now, but she's fantastic and has lots of really great academic work on the topic of the nighttime economy. So there's a lot of great stuff being done, but like we are facing a lot of the same problems, but because we're all different blueprints, there has to be a slight switch in how you deal with it. So yeah.
Yeah, what are some of those problems that we face here? I mean, in my experience, like with the Beaumont and other spaces, like a lot of people talk about noise complaints.
Yeah,
here.
Noise complaints. I mean, it's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like even if your area is zoned specifically for whatever you're doing, it's just like any sort of like outside noise. Even if you tell them, I mean, they've changed the bylaws so that it has to be at the point of reception and not at the source. And even at the point of reception, like we're just like, you know, here there's nothing here. Those noise complaints still get logged to 311, right?
Yeah.
So like, and again, that's just like encroaching residential development on places of art or like studio spaces or industrial spaces or things like that. That just basically happens with population growth. But when you push out your artists, they have to go someplace else, right? So whether that's because of lack of space or because of rising costs, you know, so those are some of the things that are happening more and more. But like, you know what? The rave always survives. They're like cockroaches.
They find a way.
They find a way. They're headless and they're scurrying and they find a way to rise.
Yeah, definitely.
So like, you know, I have like no faith. It's like, you know, something shuts down and then you're just like, hey, wait a minute, there's another hole in the wall that just popped open and you're just like, it's so great. So like, I have no fear about the like, because I find that people within like rave culture, they're just like so savvy. It's like they haven't been given a lot, but they're going to work with what they have.
Yes.
And they have the ability to figure out what the most innovative ideas are. And those are the people that like cities and businesses need to be hiring, because they're going to take a little and they're going to like build you a lot. So you know, like that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, they're the DIY, do it yourself, figure it out.
Yeah, like
make it
you
work.
know, no money, no resources, but like still, you know, there to have a good time. I always remember like talking to someone who'd been through like the Serbian like war, and they said that they were like in the bunker and they had no generator and they wanted to throw an underground rave, so they were pedaling to pedal the generator to get the music playing.
Wow.
And I was just like, you know, that's the kind of like innovation and resourcefulness that you constantly see in music scenes across the world. So.
And we want to keep the artists. They need to stay.
We do.
Here.
They do. They're part of like this wonderful mishmash of like beauty and color that like makes things so interesting and creative and just like makes you want to explore more. So yeah, definitely.
Well, I'd like to end on one question.
Yeah.
And this, because you mentioned your daughter and your child, and that you're a mother. What have you been learning recently from
my
being a
goodness,
mother?
patience. So my daughter's name is Berlin. My friend was just like surprised you didn't name her Berghain, and I was just like, no, I'm not that kind of mother. Okay? But yeah, she's just like teaching me so much. Like it's a lot of patience, and also teaching me that like I don't necessarily have to fit into a mold of what I think a mother has to be, that I could still give my daughter the love and care that I have and not be like what I thought a mother had to be. Like I don't have to necessarily give up my life. Like I'm still, it's more difficult, but I make sure that I create the space, time, and care for her. But that I'm also like, you know, like in my mid-40s and I'm going to go out and I'm DJing and I'm going to go do stuff. She's DJing with me. Sometimes we sit there and we do it together and she loves it. And like we just like, you know, pick up music together, do dance. She does hip hop dance, just like does a bunch of different stuff. And I think that a lot of times like people feel like they need to give up the rave because of the fact that it doesn't necessarily reflect what they know. But like, come on, like we're here to reinvent our own stories. And as long as we're creating an environment where, you know, a child could thrive, like, yeah, you can still listen to music.
Yes.
You can still go and dance. You can still DJ every now and again. You won't get to your social media, but you'll be able to do everything else.
Yeah, as long as there's that intention of like love and care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Love and care and nurturing and just like trying to make sure that they're like better people than you are. Right? That's what I just constantly strive for.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your time. Thanks for being
thanks
here.
so much for having me. It's been super fun.
Yeah.
I talk a mile a minute, so
No, it's
sorry.
it's
My
great.
apologies.
No, I really appreciate you opening up and sharing with everybody about yourself and your stories and
Thanks
your
so
journey.
much.
And I'm really excited for the work that you're doing. And yeah, I think
Thanks.
everyone who raves or goes to music events or, you know, is excited. And we're all excited to have you on the inside.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So we've been here today speaking and getting to know Sheena, who you might see slaying the dance floor as Donna Dada. Thank you again. This has been episode 6 of Vancity Beats, Eats, and more.